Today I want to talk about forgiveness. And the first thing I want to say about forgiveness is that if somebody tells you just forgive and implies that it is a snap decision, it's something that you can do in 2 seconds and then be done, they don't know anything about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not something you do in an instant. Forgiveness is a process. And there is a deepening of forgiveness. You can have forgiveness on like a more superficial level, but to truly forgive, as I am talking about in this video, it is a process that takes time. You have to give yourself the time to really deeply forgive. Okay? So there are 4 steps to truly forgiving somebody. The first step is you need to separate yourself from what that person did. What I mean by that is that the first thing that we all think when somebody wrongs us is, why did you do that to me? I didn't deserve it. That hurts me. I'm in pain. It's all about you. And so there's you have this thing, it's called a trauma bond, and you're bonded to that person because of the bad thing they did to you. So as long as you're trauma bonded to that person, you can't pull yourself away from it enough to have the space in your mind to truly forgive them. So the first thing you have to do is remove yourself from their action and realize that you have nothing to do with what they did. They didn't do it because there's something innately wrong with you. They didn't do it because you deserved it, because nobody deserves to be hurt. They didn't do it for any other reason except that it was them. They did it, not you. You had no control over that. And the thing is, this is important too, because I think a lot of times the reason why we can't separate ourselves from something that somebody does is because we have this false belief that we can control another person, and you can't control another person. You can only control yourself, and even that badly. You can't make anybody be any way. They're gonna be how they are. So part of the disappointment is that we want to be able to influence them and control them to be a certain way deep down inside. And the truth is that we really are not capable of that. Step 2, you need to fully realize and accept that the reason why they did what they did is because they're human, just like you. And this one's hard. We want to, when we've been hurt, we want to put ourselves up here and that person down here. That we're better than that person because we would never do that terrible thing that they did to us. So they must be, down here and bad. The truth is that in God's eyes, nobody's better than anybody else. We're all human. We all have the capacity to be incredibly kind and good, and we also have the capacity to be incredibly cruel. Every one of us. If you don't believe that you're that kind of person, you got more of a journey on your spiritual journey is by far not over, because we all are human, and we all make bad choices. So that's number 2. Number 3 is that you have to fully accept that this thing has happened. So there's a realization, and then there's an acceptance. And that part is often, hard. A lot of people say that they accept it, or they'll say, like, on a mental level, oh, this person is human, blah, blah, blah. But deep down inside, there's still not an acceptance. There's still this resentment. So there are ways to do that third step. You can pray for that person, wish them well. That is very, very powerful in coming to accept what happened, to say prayers for this person, for their well-being and their happiness. And eventually you will find that your resentment towards them is dissipating. Number 4, the final step, and a lot of times this is the hardest one. I know it has been for me. You got to forgive yourself. You got to forgive yourself for allowing that thing to happen to you. See, we all make choices. And yes, terrible things happen to us that we have no choice over. But then after that, we are holding on to that bad thing that happened to us. We're clinging to that wound. And a lot of it is because we are really not so much angry at that person. We're angry at ourselves because, again, we believe that we have control, which we don't. And we believe that it shouldn't have happened because, somehow we're not in touch with our humanity. And we're not accepting that we're human too, and that it happened, and it didn't really have anything to do with us as human beings. Sometimes, like in my case, I let things happen to myself, and that's why I had a really hard time forgiving myself, because I had an expectation of myself that was much higher than I could actually meet, because I'm human. I'm not superhuman. I'm not, angelic. I'm not an enlightened being. I'm just human. So I made mistakes. I ignored the red flags. I fell in love with somebody I had no business falling in love with. But in the end, part of the whole forgiveness process is that I must also forgive myself. And once you'll go through this cycle a couple of times, and every time you go through it, it's going to deepen. It's going to get deeper, and then you're going to find someday you're going to get to a point where you are going to feel completely neutral about what happened and about this person and about yourself and your part in it. It's just, it happened. There were lessons that I learned, incredible lessons that, quite honestly, I wouldn't trade those lessons for, the peace of never having known him. I am grateful for the lessons. And, you just got to keep working at it. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's something that I used to really, like in the beginning, I hated to hear it. And it's a hard pill to swallow, but in the end, you have to realize that you can't rush it. You can't snap your fingers. You can't make it suddenly okay. It will be okay. It's gonna be okay. But you can't force the process. You just have to work at it, pay attention, sit with it, allow the forgiveness to deepen, and you will be okay. Thanks.